with the state sentences, let's start it, okay? Because the time we have like now we waited for them for 5 minutes, so we should take a start then.
Yes, sir.
Now, do you see your screen? There is action verbs or dynamic verbs, and then there is another kind of verbs like we can do. Remember, it's not very easy to categorize these verbs in different types or different categories. Like, for example, if you have heard this, that there are transitive verbs, that then there are intransitive verbs. It is just for our ease so that we can know. We just, that's why we divide it in different types. But again, it's not very easy because then there are these words that they can be transitive or they can be intransitive at the same time. So we have these state verbs, action verbs, and then these state verbs and action verbs, also called dynamic verbs. And they are like most verbs are dynamic, right? You already know that. Now, the problem is with the state verbs. Now, state verbs are, if we then further divide it into different parts, so we have this first one, this one. If you see, we just did this yesterday or the day before yesterday on that last class. We did this one, this state verb. Now, this is only state of being, like this is a being word. Like, for example, in Urdu, when we say, मैं हूँ, right? Like, for example, मैं teacher हूँ, मैं बीमार हूँ, मैं खुश हूँ. This is a state of, and this is also called a main verb. We can use it as a main verb. So whenever I want to say, or this will always like take this adjectives or a noun. We did this one, right? And we can make these six tenses if you remember those six states sentences. Like, for example, I'm happy, I was happy, I will be happy, I have been happy, I had been happy, and then I will have been happy. And then there is another kind of verb we divided into different one, and that is called linking verbs. Now, these linking verbs also is like this one, remember, because it also connects adjectives to a noun. For example, if you say, he looks good or I am good. So see, am is a link. It's also working as a linking verb. There is a difference between linking verb and a state verb, or a state of being is just one word. Remember, that is be verb. This one be, we call it be verb, right? And then these others are different forms of this be verb. So be, was, and been. And then we also sometimes have this ing form, but this is very rare. We do not use it. I'll give you example of this being, the continuous tense, but that is very rare. We don't use it. And then if you see, these linking verbs are only this. Remember, state verbs are only a few verbs, not many, while dynamic and action verbs are so many. Most verbs are dynamic or action verbs. But these state verbs are very few. If you count it, you have not more than 30 verbs. They are very limited, remember, 30 or maybe 40. But these dynamic verbs are so many. Uh, so the state verbs are, then we can divide it into these different parts, different kinds. So number one is the linking verb. Sorry, the state of being verb, that is just only one, be. And then we have this linking verbs. Linking verbs are like state of being verb. It works the same, because if you see the formula, like for example, he looks handsome. Or, for example, if I say he is handsome. So if you see, the formula is almost the same. It has a subject, or he is handsome. And it also gives you the same meaning, handsome. So do you understand this one? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then you see this another one is called it is also, this one is again these phrase verbs. This is also it also works the same. If you see, I can be rich, but these are also called modal verbs, if you remember. But it is with this helping verb. Here, if I say I can be happy, or he can be he may be busy, or for example, he might be busy, or he had been busy, or you should have been there. Now, all these are called phrasal verbs, but again, it is a state verb. Remember, it works as a state verb. So here, if you see, this be is working as a helping verb, and this can is also it can be a helping verb or modal verb. So here, this be is working as a helping verb, and it is for a state. Like, for example, if I say, I can be happy. Now, this is a state word, this is a state phrase, verb, state phrase. And if I say I can play. So this one is, see, this one is different. Do you get it? Right? So one is the state verb, and the other one, first one, like this one is the states sentence, or this one is the action sentence. And it has this helping verb, linking verb, or a modal verb. We can also have a, so sometimes a verb can be of a different kinds. Like sometimes it can be a state verb, and it can be a helping verb at the same time, and it can be a linking verb at the same time. So that's why it's a little bit complicated. Now, this is just for linguists to name these things, or divide it into different categories. But if you want to learn English, now, the easy way is to learn just one tense in Urdu, and it will be very clear then. Like, for example, you all know the Urdu of this, मैं खेल सकता हूँ. So you need to just change this dynamic verb all the time. And here we do not have a dynamic verb, but here we have a dynamic verb. So I will call this sentence a state sentence, this one. And I will call this, sorry, I will call this one a action sentence, and I will call this one a state sentence. So, like, for example, I can make thousands of sentences, this one. Here we have adjective, and here we have a verb. So here we have a dynamic verb, that is play, and here we have an adjective. So I just talked about adjectives, that after state verbs there is adjective, but then there are another kind that is called a state verb. Later we'll do that after this. And then if you see, if we do, so do you understand this state, this verb phrase, or state verb phrase, this one, right?
What's the difference between this and modal
Would,
verb and static?
please just say it again.
There's a difference between state verbs
Yes,
and
it can be would, yes, would be, or would have been. It can also be used. So we can use it in a state sentence. Like, for example, I would be happy. Or, for example, I would have been there if you had invited me. Were you asking about this would?
I'm asking about the model.
Please say it louder. I cannot hear you. And then if you see this helping verbs, you already know. Now, this helping verb does not have any meaning, remember. It is just this one. This helping verb does not have any meaning. It is just tell us which kind of a tense it is. Like, for example, if I say, are you, do you play cricket or do you take class? So here, this do is just telling us that it is a present tense. Or for example, did you call me yesterday? Now, this did is just telling me that it is a past tense. Or for example, will you take class? So again, this is just telling us that it is a future tense. Or for example, uh, he will have waited for us. So again, that is just telling us that it is a present perfect. Or for example, uh, he is being arrested. So it is telling us that it is a passive but a continuous tense. So this being is just working as a helping verb, and it tells us that it is a passive and a continuous tense. Or for example, been, he has been called or he has been invited. So been is just telling us this is also is a helping verb. Now can and maybe is also a helping verb, or will can be a helping verb, or could can be a helping verb, and it is also a modal verb as well. So if you see, I just told you about this helping verb, just this being verb, right? So you should, other verbs, you know it, but this one is a little bit, most people did this one wrong, is that we just talked about state of being verbs. That was very important. Huh. Do you have any questions?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear
Sir,
you.
are the phrasal verbs, sir, the phrasal verbs are also stative verbs, sir? Is that right, sir?
Now, phrasal verbs, there are other phrasal verbs that they are not stative verb. No, not all phrasal verbs. Here, when we talked about this phrasal verb, that is different. It is with that this modal verbs or helping verbs. These are different. Remember, it has meaning. It has a different meaning, kind of. It tells us a different kind of a tense. And then there are these phrasal verbs, other phrasal verbs. We did that yesterday, that, like, for example, which gives you a different meaning. Now those can be of action as well, or a state as well. Those are different. Like, for example, the one we did, that I came across my friend yesterday. Those are different phrasal verbs. Those can be action or state, but these are state. These are state with just be. Here we are just talking about this be. See, this with every verb there is this with every word this is be. See, this be. So we are just talking about the state verbs, this one. So state just shows
Oh,
you a state. It doesn't show you a verb. Whenever we do not have a dynamic verb here, now an action, that is called state. Huh?
thank you, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, another thing which is very confusing is this one. Now, this one, it is also called state verbs. These, the doubt, know, or want, these are also called state verbs. Why these are state verbs? Because these verbs cannot be used in a continuous tense. This one. That is why we call it state verbs. Otherwise, it works. It is a dynamic verb. Remember, it is an action. For example, when you say I agree, so you are doing something. Remember, like this is an action verb. It looks like an action verbs, but the thing is that why we include it in a state verbs is because we do not use it in a continuous form or in a continuous tense. That is why we cannot use it. So these are a little bit, I mean, these are not clear that how can we include it into um, in state. It is always confusing. Like, for example, and remember one more thing which is very important is that you cannot learn the rules. Remember, this course is all about this, that there are exceptional cases, why we have exceptional cases, and how we are going to learn. So when we read and listen to people all the time, we will just come to know that this sentence sounds awkward. We sometimes may not know the rule, but that's the sound of that sentence may like that sentence may sound very awkward and incorrect. For example, I'm doubting. Now, this doubt word, we do not use it in a passive, in a continuous tense. Or for example, I'm knowing. Now, this know is like they have included it into state verbs because that you cannot use it in a continuous tense. So I know him, but you cannot say I'm knowing him. That will be a different. That will give you a different meaning when you use it in a continuous tense. Like for example, I've never heard this word, this want word in a continuous tense. This want verb in a continuous tense. Like for example, I'm wanting, or this mean verb. Now this mean, I do not mean it. I never heard this, that I am not meaning it. Or this matter word, like for example, it matters, or I cannot say it is mattering. See, you have never heard these words in these verbs in a continuous tense. Or for example, I'm needing you. We say I need you. So we
Knowing,
cannot say, so any verb which we cannot say in a continuous tense, they
knowing,
also included them into a state tense. But again, there are certain verbs that it works as a dynamic verb and it works as a state verb, but it gives you a totally different meaning. Like for example, this be verb, first this be, huh? Were you asking a question?
knowing,
G?
knowing,
Yes,
no.
knowing, knowing.
तो ये सर स्टेटिव हो गया.
Yes, remember, you cannot use these state verbs, the one I just have mentioned, this doubt, know, or belong, or agree, or need, or see. These words are included in state verbs because we cannot have a continuous tense for these kind of verbs. That is why they have included in, or they call it a state verb. Like, for example, see, like for example, I've never heard this or I've never used it, that I'm needing this. We say I need this. There is no continuous form of this kind of a sentence. So you don't have to worry about it. Remember, you cannot memorize, or there is not a specific way that which word is a state verb and which word is a action verbs, because then there are these verbs that it can work as a state verb, and there are these verbs that it can also work as an action verbs. What you need to understand is this first one we just did is be, was, or is. You have to understand that one, that one is a state verb and you need an adjective with that. Now these verbs, what we are doing right now is you will learn it as you go on and read and read and read. So you will have an idea that this one is wrong and this one is correct. Without knowing the rules, it will sound like the sound will tell you. Like for example, if somebody uses um, use I agree. Like for example, agree is the first form of the verb, agreed is the second form, and we have another ing form, I agreeing. So we, like, you can ask me that we can use it in all 12 sentences, but you cannot use it in all 12 sentences. You can only use in 6 sentences. You cannot use these verbs in a continuous tense. And what is the formula? There is no formula, remember. So when you read it, you will come to know that there are certain verbs that you cannot use it in a continuous tense. I will show you how with examples. Like for example, how does it work is that there are certain verbs that they can be dynamic and action verbs. Like for example, if you see this be, we talked about this one, that it is a action verb, but sometimes in a different way it can work as an action verb. Like for example, see, I am happy, or he is silly. Now he is silly is a state verb, it does not show any action. For example, she is silly. Now if you see she is silly, this is what? A state verb. She is silly. But if I say she is being silly today, it means that she is not silly. But today she is acting as if she is silly, or she is behaving silly. So we say that she is being silly. So it has a different meaning. Or for example, stop being silly. Like if you tell somebody, so you can use it in an action verbs, but it will have a different meaning. For example, if you say you are selfish, or if you say you are being really you are really being selfish, so it means that you are selfish, but at this time you are really being selfish, that you are really selfish at this time. Do you understand? So it can be used as a action sentences. So these are action sentences, remember, because and this is just for a short time of period we are using it. But if you just talk about the state or condition, that she is silly or she is stupid all the time, or if he is a stupid person, you say he's a stupid person, that is a state sentence. We are saying that his condition, his behavior is stupid. But if I say she is being silly right now, or she is being silly today, so I'm just saying it that she is being silly for for this short time, not permanent. And if you see this, another example is is uh, for example, yes, they are being extremely rude. Like for example, they are not rude, but they are being extremely rude today. Like for example, if you know a person and he is very polite and very kind, but then you meet him and you find him rude at that particular time, and you say, well, he was being extremely rude to me. I mean, he was so rude. I did not know that he was rude, but at that specific time when I met him that day, he was really being or he was being rude at that time. I'm not saying that he was rude. Or when you say he was rude, I mean, that person is rude. Or for example, so you cannot say this one. See, you cannot say it in a action sentence, this I am 35 years old. You cannot say I'm being 35 years old, because that is a state. So you just say, or you cannot continue this thing. Or for example, I'm being tired. Now you cannot say I am being tired. You say I am tired. Or for example, see this, another example. These verbs are a little bit confusing because it can work as an action verb and it can also work as a state verb, but it will have a different meaning. For example, I'm thinking she looks great. So this one is like, we cannot say it in this is a, we cannot say it in action. I say we'll like the right way will be I think she looks great. This is a opinion. So if you have an opinion, you always say it in a state sentence. You cannot say it in an action sentence. You say I think she looks great. You cannot say I'm thinking she looks great. But again, you can say in an action sentence, what are you thinking about? Like at this particular moment, what are you thinking? If you tell somebody, what are you doing? And he says, I'm thinking. Or if you say, what you think about, what do you think about her? You say, I think that she is beautiful, or she's great, or she's genius. So if you see here, we have this adjective, see? And that cannot be in a continuous tense. And see, this have is also can be an active and action. So how will you understand is that when you have a car, you say, I have a car, that is condition. But look, in Urdu, you cannot say, आप ये नहीं कह सकते. Look, have means in Urdu, it means rakna. So I told you that any verb which has nun alif na at the end, when it ends in nun alif na, that is called a verb. Like for example, ana. Hello.
Yes, sir. Carry on.
Why is okay? So yes. So, like for example, when you say, look, the very easy way is like this. Just try to convert it into your language, Urdu. Like for example, I told you that day that any verb which ends in nun alif na is called action verb. Sona, kana, pina, jagna. See, I just said sona or sochna or rakna. Have means rakna. Have is a helping verb as well. Like for example, if I say I have met him, there it is a helping verb. It does not have any meaning. But when I say uh, I have a book, मैं book रखता हूँ. मैं I think, मैं सोचता हूँ. I see, मैं देखता हूँ. I taste, मैं चखता हूँ. Right? So all these nun alif na, whenever we have a Urdu word which ends in nun alif na, so that is an action verb. But if, and then we have this one verb which is be. So वो नून अलिफ ना से खत्म नहीं होता. वो कहता है, मैं कहता हूँ मैं हूँ, मैं खुश हूँ, मैं अमीर हूँ, मैं गरीब हूँ, मैं खफा हूँ. So that is a pure state sentence. So but have, see, you cannot say it in even Urdu कि आप कहो कि मैं गाड़ी रख रहा हूँ. No, you just say मैं गाड़ी रखता हूँ. I have a car. You cannot say it in a continuous tense कि मैं गाड़ी रख रहा हूँ. Now this one will be wrong. You cannot say that मैं गाड़ी रख रहा हूँ. Right? Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Hello? And if you see this C word, now see is when you say I'm seeing it. So you cannot say it in a, like you mostly you do not use it in a action verb. Like I'm seeing it. You say I see it. But if you use it in an action verb, it will have a different meaning, remember. And it means milna. When you say I'm seeing you tomorrow, it means I'm not saying that I will just like literally see you. It means that I will meet you. I'm seeing him these days. Like I'm meeting him every day. So when you use it in an action verb, it changes the meaning. Otherwise, we do not use it in an action verb. So there are certain verbs that it works in a state sentence and have a different meaning, while it can be used in an action verb and have a different meaning. So,
Excuse me, sir.
G, G, G.
Sir, if we say that I see him with great respect, so how is this?
Like that is a state verb. but you cannot say it in a continuous sense. You cannot say, I am seeing him with great respect. So that is like state. See is state. or
Okay, sir. Thank you.
or here, if you see I see him means I find him or I know him. You can also, it has a different meaning. It doesn't have a literary see meaning that you are looking at him. Now you know the difference between see and look. So when you look at somebody or you see somebody, so see is like, it will give you a different meaning. When you use it in an action verb, see is, they say see is a state verb. You cannot use it in a, so any verb which you cannot use in a continuous tense is also called state verb. So I did not talk about this that day because I thought you will get confused. You should not get confused. Remember, it's very easy that there are certain verbs that we cannot use it in a continuous tense, and there are not many. Remember, there are very few. So like if you keep on reading, you will have an idea that there are certain verbs that you cannot use it in a continuous tense. And if somebody asks you why we cannot use it, you don't know. Sometimes you just know that it sounds different, so it's strange or very awkward when you say I'm seeing at him. No, or I'm seeing him. I'm seeing him means I'm meeting him. It will give you a different meaning. Like for example, this taste verb. Now, taste verb is a state verb, right? We already know. So you cannot say this soup is tasting great. You say this soup tastes great, or you say it tastes delicious. You cannot say it is tasting delicious. No, see, it is a state. So you cannot say it in a continuous tense. Um, but yes, in a different sentence, for example, if you say the chef is tasting the soup, I mean, at that particular time, he is doing it. Are you tasting the soup or eating it or drinking it? So if you are talking about that particular time action, then it can be a, do you understand this one? Remember, just one thing is
Yes,
that
sir.
why we talked about the state verb is that I just wanted you to understand this one, because when you're not sure about this one, then you make a lot of mistake. Today we'll be doing complex sentences, so you will need to have this verb. So this is a state verb. Sometimes when I ask somebody, they make sentences like this. They say I will happy. They just skip this state verb. That is very wrong. Like it's very awkward when you say I will happy. No, I will be happy, or I have been happy. They say I have happy. No, I have been happy. Or they say I have there, or I have been there. So we just talk about this one. But then when you did your assignment, uh, that was good that you went and searched it on internet, and you also on internet found this, that it is also a state verb, this one. So you made these examples, but then what I'm just telling you is that it can be action or it can be state depending on the way you use it in a tense. So that's why. Okay. How many students do we have today? 13 only.